pro-life across America. I think you spoke of that earlier, of which she is the president. She is also a volunteer to support women who are experiencing crisis pregnancies. Her next talk is "We Have the Weapons to Survive and Thrive."
You know, these little nuns are tough acts to follow, I'll tell you that right now. I'm just going to hold up our little books and bag. I only saw one bag lady. We still have some, Di? Yeah, and there's, if you order them from Pro-Life Across America, there's no, we don't charge shipping. We just charge our donors. So anyways, I just want to hold this up. If you haven't got one yet, and I told you before, if you don't have the money, just take it. And then the Prayers for Life book, and again, the Catholic book. I'll give this back to you. Look, Di, I got the whole thing here. Anyways, it's still there. All the proceeds go to Pro-Life Across America. How many here have heard our radio commercials on Relevant Radio or on iHeartRadio? Anything, have you heard the commercials? Good. Those are my kids and my grandkids. I put everyone to work, especially their payment is a Dairy Queen afterwards if they're good. But I don't pay for anything. When I call these salesmen to buy billboards and they say, well, lady, it costs $1,000, I say, you know, that's how much I said, yeah, but I'm nonprofit, and I'll make a deal with you. I'll tell you what I'll do for you to lower the price. And besides that, I'm a mom of a large family. I never tell them how many because they'll hang up. I just say, I'm a mom of a large family, and I've never paid full price for anything in my life, so I'm not going to start now. So it works out. I'd just like to share with you a couple of the billboards that we use. This is my 2 grandbabies in a bathtub, and it says, we all start small. You know, these are cute sayings, but the thing is, when they read the heartbeat, 18 days from conception, that's what gets them. It's the cute face. We didn't save nearly as many babies, so we started putting babies on our, and the babies, by the way, are all babies of donors, so if you want to have your baby on a billboard, send us a picture and a donation, but and it doesn't matter the cost. Or I'm a looker, eye development 14 days from conception. I got a call from a guy in Seattle, Washington. He said, you know, I really am against you people, your pro-life deal. I'm attorney at law, and I never want this law changed. I always want abortion to be legal. But my wife is pregnant, and she's scheduled for an abortion. I said, oh, can I help you? I can get you in touch with a Seattle group, and they will help you through this. And he said, no. It's not a question of money. He says, we probably make over $500,000 each. But, you know, she works too. We have a full-time nanny. But we agreed when we got married we'd have only 2 kids. And she didn't like pregnancy. She didn't like that. But she agreed to the 2 kids. So we have the 2 kids. Now she got pregnant. And she says, this is it, I'm having the abortion. We agreed. And he says, I feel like I have no right. You know, men, we can control them so quickly, you know. Why? You know, he didn't even put up a fight. Must not be Italian. Well, anyways, I said, what can I do? What can I do? He said, well, let me finish my story. I said, okay. He says, so on Broadway in downtown Seattle, you got this billboard. And it says, it's the one that says looker, about the eye development at 14 days. And I said, yeah. He said, I thought you had a right to know, and that's why I called. It generated a conversation we would never have had. And in the end, she canceled her abortion. And he said, I thought at least you people, I know you say you save babies, and in this case you did. I thought you have a right to know. I said, I bet you really want to be a supporter of ours and send us some money. But he didn't bite on that. Now we have this little guy here. He's an adopted baby of one of our donors, born to play. I was moving 10 weeks from conception. Or we have these little babies. These are Asian blacks. Aren't they cuties? This is Rosalie and, I can't think of her other name. What was the other one? I'm going to forget the twin for sure. Our hearts beat 18 days from conception. This one is our little Downs baby. We have more people ordering this. I don't think they realize they've just got a little Downs baby in their town now. Every baby is a blessing. Fingerprints 9 weeks from conception. We had a young girl. Well, actually, we had a clinic director in a small city who called one day and she says, you know, I was going to call you. I knew that was you with the billboards and tell you, you people don't get your money's worth. This billboard was plastered on the side of a building, an old brick building, 3 blocks away from where, in the main street of town, main thoroughfare. No one's going to see this. But what she forgot is that it was near the college. There's 3 colleges in that town. It was near where all the dorms were. And it was also across the street from a stop-and-go light. She said a young girl came into our office and said, I'm scheduled for an abortion. And I looked up, and there was this billboard slapped on the side of a big brick building, and it said my baby already had fingerprints at 9 weeks. And my hand started to shake on the steering wheel, and I pulled over. I started to cry when I realized I'm aborting a baby that's already got fingers and fingerprints. So a simple message like that. Our newest one is a baby, born and unborn. We thought we should send these to Virginia and New York especially. So, but Illinois, too, who wants to be an abortion capital. Or this one, in case they don't know, what? I could feel pain before I was born. This is little baby Veronica. And then for those we have 11,000 lakes in Minnesota, born to sail, eye development 14 days from conception. But here's just some of the kinds of responses we get before I go into my talk here. I had an abortion this February, the day before Valentine's Day to be exact. I'm still having trouble adjusting. I feel like I'm going crazy. What can I do? Can anyone help me? This is an email sent to us. Women are hurting all over. I've never met a woman in all the years I've worked with problem pregnancies or women who've had an abortion, who wanted an abortion. I've even debated women, and when they debate, they'll even give you every excuse in the book on why they had to go through with that abortion. It's a very sad thing. So we need to pray for our opponents, pray for them. There's another message I got from a woman in, let me see if I can find it. I'm in a prison where I can't call your 1-800 number. We can only make collect calls. I had an abortion years ago, and I'm suffering with the after effects. Please send me anything you have about how to deal with these feelings of shame, guilt, loss, and depression. Most of all, write me so I can talk to someone about this. Signed, Amanda, and it's from prison. It's not just Catholics who know how to feel shame and loss. We got a letter from a woman who said, I wanted 3 children. I aborted 3 children. May this save far more. And she sent in a donation. We're hearing from people, by the way, all over the country because of what's happening in New York and Virginia and states like that. I had a woman who called and she says, I've never confessed to another human being that I had an abortion. But she said, when I hear what's going on now, this wide-scale, whole-scale slaughter that's even to birth and after birth, I felt like I had to get involved. So we need to pray for people, pray for our people, pray for our own family members. I remember I had a cousin who had I think she had 5 abortions. And she'd had some real mental problems. And a long story short, I ended up taking her to my house for a week, as if I didn't have enough people visiting at my house. But I think I only had about 6 or 7 kids at the time. Darling gal, really, just super problem she had. And her sisters told her later, why in the world would you hang around with Mary Ann? I mean, like, she thinks she's the Pope's sister. You know, she's not only is she Catholic, but she's this zealot for pro-life, you know. And my cousin said, you know, I've had more psychiatrists. I've been in mental hospitals twice. I've attempted suicide twice. No one's treated me kinder or more compassionate and more sweeter than Mary Ann. That wasn't me. That's the Holy Spirit. That's the Holy Spirit just pouring through to give love to this girl, right? Right? And that's who you and I need to be. Well, I want to say, and sometimes, you know, when you get to be a mom, you guys are all perfect. I was not. My husband and I, when we first were parents, you know, we thought we're going to treat our kids different than our parents did. We are going to show you. I mean, I actually thought my kids would never cry because I was going to be so great, you know. Plus, I'm going to be their friend, you know. So we go to the first school thing where my son Timmy was in the 3rd grade, and every kid had to write this on the wall, and we're reading on the wall now. And it says that the name of the lecture, the name of the thing they had to write was, When My Dad Was in 3rd Grade. And here's what Timmy wrote. When my dad was in 3rd grade, the desks were all stuck together. They didn't have a playground or swings. They didn't have a chalkboard. They didn't have electric lights. They had to write with feathers. Now, my husband went home like crawling, you know, he's just losing his hair by then. I mean, he was, you know, still playing ball and doing all these things. He thought he was young, and then this creep tells him, you know, that. But, you know, our kids are watching us. They're paying attention. And your grandparents and aunts and godmothers, if you don't have kids, you're not out of the picture, kids. They're watching you. You watch what you decorate. I put saints' pictures on every wall. Trust me, my son Tim, he collected trouble too. And I would go downstairs and he'd take the crucifix and put it in the drawer as if that's going to make a difference. He can still get by with something, right. Yeah. So Mary Elizabeth, when she was in school, they were giving something on smoking, and she had to write why she wanted to remain smoke-free. I want to remain smoke-free because you can get lung cancer, heart disease, emphysema, and yellow fingers. Now, it's funny, yellow fingers, little kids, they're observant. We didn't have a smoker in our house. I was a steam engine, but I quit by the time Mary Elizabeth, But they observe, they see these things. And yet, this is in the Wall Street Journal just 2 days ago, and it was on our news this morning, for any of you who turned the news on early. I just have to share with you, this is where the world's going, and that's why you ladies are going to stick out like a sore thumb, and if you don't, you better go to confession because there's something wrong. You better stick out because you have to be a role model and example, and that's why you have to stick with each other. Velma said it right. Hang out with your best friends. Hang out with like-minded people. Get rid of all the deadbeats that are challenging you and giving you a hard time. Because all they do is wear you down and shut you up. No, be Italian. Get it out there, Here is the headline. Schools add new section to dress code for parents. Okay, let me just read. Okay. A Houston school is clamping down on inappropriate dress, not by students, but by their parents, joining a handful of schools across the country that are banning short dresses, sleepwear, that's nice, and other items parents sometimes wear into school buildings. Here's a quote. The parents were coming in risque clothes. Isn't that cute? Said that the principal of this school, she was interviewed on TV this morning from Houston, they were coming in a manner that was not presentable for educational setting. Now, in case she was exaggerating, Miss Carletta, here's another principal from another school in another city who says, he said he heard concerns from the school leaders about parents showing up in inappropriate wear, including a parent coming to the elementary school in a negligee. He says, based on what the principal told me, body parts were exposed. Think about what that does to a child for the rest of the day. The child? What about the other teachers? How are they going to concentrate, What was really unbelievable this morning when I heard it on the newscast was one of the news commentators on Fox of all stations said, well, I defend their right. After all, I've run out the door and brought my kids to school, and I don't know if it was whatever it was, short, whatever. And I just, really? Come on, think about this. Think about this. So this is what we're up against, you and I. Now I have some words of what Mother Teresa says. St. Francis, I'll start with him. He says, we have been called to heal wounds, to unite what has fallen apart, and to bring home those who have lost their way. Many who have seemed to us to be children of the devil will still become Christ's disciples. Isn't that wonderful? So you and I are healers. We're supposed to come and heal the wounds. And what better mothers do that? What better women? We're trained. We're nurturers. That's what we are. We're caretakers, nurturers. It's really in our chemistry to do that. It really is. And Mother Teresa says, if you want to save, she said, you want to change the world and save the world? Go home and love your family. Isn't that hard? I mean, really? Send me to a mission in Pakistan. Well, they'll think I'm great. But you go home and try and love those snot-nosed brats, especially if I had 7 teenagers at once. I don't want anyone to tell me some story. I can top it. Trust me, But you got to love them anyways. You can grit teeth. I used to think my teeth were going to go right down into my chin from gritting, especially in church or places where they were misbehaving. But no. So she says, go home and love your family, and that's how we're going to change the world. And that's why you want to stick together as the church. I mentioned before, my parents weren't exactly thrilled when I had so many children, especially when I started adopting mixed-race kids. My poor dad, he meant well, but it was really hard on my father. He was Italian. They picked on Italians a lot. And the last thing he ever thought he would be doing would be having a black Asian son. And so for about 5 years, he disowned me. And I could understand. Well, it was okay. He said he didn't want to be seen in public with me. Most people didn't, so it didn't matter. I didn't go in public anyways. Where'd you go with 13 kids, you know? But if it wasn't for my St. Charles community, and that's where I'm in northeast Minneapolis, St. Charles Borromeo Parish, my pastor was wonderful. He had some nun that was supposed to be semi-retired because she had a heart condition, and she waited on our family hand and foot. We never bought a turkey or ham for Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, anything. She made sure. I kept telling her, sister, we're not poor. Of course you're not. Of course you're not. She was from a family of 12, and she said, I just want you to taste some of these good things. I mean, she was always, just lavishing us with wonderful things. I started a prayer group in my home just because I needed to have some kind of security. I joined the Catholic Charismatic movement, and I thought I got so many kids and so much laundry, I can't be driving over there all the time. So I started a little group in my home, and for 10 years we met. You didn't have to be Catholic, but most of us were. We had people come I never knew, people who were visiting, people from other states, people who were praying about fertility, whatever. It was wonderful. But one woman, I have to tell you, who taught me a lot about prayer, especially for me because I'm a controller. We're a sister. We're a little Spitfire sister who talked about control. That's why God gave me 13. See, you don't have to have that many kids, some of you, because you probably learn patience after 1 or 2, I didn't learn it. He just kept throwing another kid at me. Maybe she'll get humility this time. Maybe she'll get patience this time, Some of us take longer. So we would have our prayer group every week. And we'd say, first half hour would be prayers of praise, and then the last half hour would be just short little snippets about what we would ask each other to pray for. And it was wonderful. Well, there was one girl who came almost every week for many, many years. And I never knew her personally. She just heard of us and started to come. And pretty soon she'd say, dear Lord, when I got to be prayers of petition, she'd say, and dear Lord, thank you for, I'll call him Larry. Thank you for Larry. And Larry isn't of our faith. And it turns out this girl had left her family, left the faith, got involved with a guy who was involved with drugs and things like that. And she ended up married to him, have children with him. But he had no idea Catholic faith, none of this, novena, rosary, I never heard of anything like that. And she's coming from this Irish Catholic family that she's now got a kid and deciding, voila, wake up, I want something for this child, and back to the church she goes. And she got his consent to at least have the baby baptized. But she would pray quietly every week for, we'll call him Larry, and she'd say, if Larry could, open his heart that we could at least have a crucifix on the wall in my home. I mean, I want to kill the guy. Where is this guy? What kind of a Mussolini is this? He doesn't want a crucifix on the... Next week, same thing. And God bless Larry. He said, I could take the children to church. Now she got little preschoolers, take the children to church. He said, gives her permission to do this, And we're all looking like, who is this guy? I mean, we just cannot believe. And she's so sweet. Praise. Never once in 10 years did I ever heard her badmouth this man. Never once. I did, but she didn't. I had to go to confession lots of times over this jerk that wouldn't let him have a little picture on the wall or a crucifix, nothing. So they start to put their kids to school. And what happens? One day she comes and she says, dear Lord, just please help Larry because Larry is so upset. I had asked Larry for permission to let the children go to CCD, preschool religion or whatever. And Larry's kind of consenting, but the public school is making Larry so upset. He's actually thinking about letting us enroll in a Catholic school. I have no doubt in my mind it was Anne's prayers and her submission that he was the head of the home. I have no doubt. We ladies can change the world. We really can. We people of faith. We have to realize what we got. We set the tone in the family, not the guy. We set the tone. If we use bad language, they do too. If we dress dirty or we allow that kind of junk, they do too. Men are such followers. They really are. They are. I really do believe with all my heart the man is the head of the home. He really is. I love My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Anybody see that show? When she says, that's right, the husband is the head. The husband's the head. But the wife is the neck. And the neck turns the head. And if you're real smart, you'll let them think it was their idea. So we have to, we have a lot of Muslim women in my area, and I must say, how do they dress? They dress modestly. We got people who they go around, they go to church and their Great Divide is hanging out. I mean, come on. It's nuts. Come on. And then we want men to treat them with respect and think, oh, you've got something there I have never seen. Yeah. Men are natural providers and protectors if we would only give them their role. When I tell you about our Pro-Life Across America, guess what? We have about 250 calls to our hotline. 40% of the callers to our hotline are men. Men. Sometimes they're the husbands, sometimes they're the boyfriends, sometimes they're the brother of the girl who's pregnant. Sometimes they're the father. My divorced wife insists my daughter have an abortion. I don't feel good about this. I don't want to help. I don't want to pay for it. What can I do? I have men crying on the phone, sobbing, because the girl's going to have the abortion and they found out that they have no legal right to stop them. I had a man who called the other day and he said, I haven't been to confession in 10 years. But I heard your ad on the Catholic radio, and I paid for 2 abortions years ago, and I've never forgiven myself. And I just felt after hearing your ad, maybe you have something for me. I said, we actually have a men's support group of those who've been through an abortion experience. Men are natural providers and protectors if we allow them to be. And of course, I give them hints if they call and say, well, my girlfriend, I say, well, here's what I want you to do. And sometimes it works. They'll call you back. So we have to let men be men and be part of this solution, too, with it, even within the abortion experience, and ask for healing. As I said before, St. Francis says, we have been called to heal wounds, and that's who we are. We want them to know, just like we know, that our number one goal is to get to heaven. And we need to pray for each other and let each other know that we're praying for each other. And even people who don't agree with us. We can let them know in a very sweet way. We don't need to pound them over the head, which is a good lesson for me to keep reminding myself, not to beat them over the head, but to let them know I disagree. As I said before, I'm Italian. Don't be fooled by the hair. I used to be a brunette, But I did. I was a brunette. If you look at the old books, you go, well, she isn't the one that wrote this book. She was a brunette. Well, then I put my little last one in kindergarten, and all of a sudden I got this white junk all over my, I thought, isn't these young moms look like they, like I gave birth to them, and now they're they're a mom, and I'm still the mom. This is 13 kids, 13 kids. So I went down to the drugstore, got myself a bottle. I tell you, by the time my husband got home that night, he's sitting across the table from me, and he looks at me and goes, what in the world did you do now? Ladies, I was so glad he noticed, After all the years we've been married, if this guy's still looking at me and caring, I'm a happy mom, I think we should all be a little Italian. I think we're going to have to answer for this if we don't. If we know someone is making a crucial mistake, and we can, in a way, now Scripture talks about, we need to educate the ignorant or the doubtful and admonish the sinner. And we can do it in a very tender way. Did you think about this? Have you thought about this? Or I'm praying for you because that's such a serious decision if you're going to live with somebody. I've had young men tell me that if it wasn't for a classmate in college that warned them, I see that you're getting you're getting very close to Susie, and if this keeps up, something can happen. Did you stop and think? Because if it's not the woman you're going to marry. And I had a young man, and by the way, that young man was entering the seminary at the time. He said, if it wasn't for my college friend who stopped me, I was seriously involved with a young woman. And he wasn't even Italian. But, the guy that told him. So we need to, you college kids, I met these darling college kids over there. Where are you, honeys? From Washington, there they are. And you're going to go back and you're going to encourage your friends in a nice way to save themselves for marriage. You are. Each one of us are called. And that doesn't mean that they're going to do everything we say. Trust me. My kids could hardly wait to get away from my world. They could hardly wait to leave home. Really. And they'd like to take my son Tony called home and he said, hey, how is everything? Oh, Charlie went to the Air Force first, and Tony had one foot on the back door. He could hardly wait to leave. He was next in line. And Charlie had just finished basic training in the Air Force, and he called home for the first time, and Tony answers the phone, and Charlie says, "How is it?" And he says, same old, same old. She's telling everybody what to do, and I'm still grounded, and there's rules all over the place. And Charlie says, "I really miss it." He said, "Oh, what I wouldn't give for that." You know, it's true. But even when they're in the service, he was in the service for 4 years. He was on the war zone twice. He called home for the first time, and he was now down in Texas. And the kids it was Thanksgiving, and I'm in the kitchen cooking. And I can hear him passing the phone around. It's Charlie. Let's hear what action he's seeing. Let's see what he's going to do. "Hey, Charlie, did you go to that one bar that they talk about that's in the paper, blah, blah, blah?" You know, and they get to me, and I say, "So, have you found a church yet? And have you been to confession?" He says, "Ma," he says, "I'm a grown man. I've been to a war zone twice. I've been in the Air Force." He says, and everybody's asking me if what I've seen, what I've done, what fun things. "What are you asking me about confession and church?" I said, "Yep, and give me the name of the person that cares more about your soul, and I'll never ask again." Quiet. "Mom, I love you." They know, and if I don't ask, they know I'm asking, you know. Tony will say, "She didn't even ask this time." It's up to us. It's up to us to let them know I'm praying. I never give up. I never give up. In fact, if they do leave, we're National Catholic Register, EWTN. We advertise on them. They have wonderful little things. I encourage this. For those of you, I mentioned this before about offering it up. What can we do? You know, we pray for them. Pray. You know, Romans 12:12. Be patient under trial, persevere in prayer. Rejoice in hope. Be patient under trial, persevere in prayer. And that's who we should be, really. Rejoice in hope. Be patient under trial, persevere in prayer. But if you know someone that's out of the church, sometimes they're out because they're ashamed, or they're afraid to go back. I mean, my brother had 3 wives and a bunch of kids that were conceived naughtily, you know. How does he come back? I kept telling him, I'm praying for him. I used to offer my dirty diapers. That was before paper diapers. You know, I'd open up that diaper and it would make me laugh. You know, look at this mess. This has got to be offered for my brother, you know. It's all over the place, you know. I hated that. I hated my 4 to 11 loads of laundry I did every day, including Christmas and Easter. But when you offer it up for someone, it makes you laugh. It does. It makes you laugh out loud. But I'm not above sending people, and I sign my name. I send them little inserts. You know, I might take it to the copy machine and reduce it down on why and how to return to Sunday Mass, and why and how to return to go to confession. This is an insert that the National Catholic Register puts in their paper, I think every year around Lent time. And I just love it. It gives me an excuse, and I just write a little Post-it note. They can't argue with Post-it notes, you know. I just put a Post-it note saying, I'm still praying, I love you, you know. What can they do? St. Augustine said, and you know, we have to be people of joy. So that's why we're not going to beat anybody up. We're not going to be sad. We're not going to lecture. Lectures don't do any good. We need to, St. Augustine says we should be a head to toe alleluia. And that's what we want. We're people of joy. We want them to have what we have, joy. And that's why we're after them. And that's why God's after us and doesn't let go of us. Because he wants us to have that joy. And that's what we want even for our enemies. Even for our enemies, or people who think they're our enemies. They shouldn't be. But so pray, you know, never give up. And I honestly believe it's up to us to say something. If you know kids that are living together, or you have relatives or whatever, you have to set the tone and say, I had this one couple, I was giving a talk afterwards, and this one couple stayed after everybody was on it, and the husband nudges her and says, okay, go ask her. And she says, well, we have this lake cabin, and you mentioned the lake cabin about kids living together, and my daughter's already living with her boyfriend, and so I didn't dare say, well, when you come to the cabin, you can. I said, why not? It's your property, your house. You have to say, this isn't right. I can't condone this. I can't put up with it. You do it. And she says, well, now what do we do? You know, it's the damage is done. We've already let them do it. And I said, if I were you, I would go home and say, you know, we used to let you do this, but I heard this old woman talk at this church, and she says I'm going to have to answer to God for this one, and so I changed the rule. You know, nothing wrong with changing your mind and changing the rule. We have to set the tone and say, here's why I don't want this to happen to you. Here's why I'm worried about your soul, you know, whatever. So St. Teresa says, God pays attention to our love. Not one of us is indispensable. God has the means to do all things and to do away with the work the most capable of human beings can do. We can work until we drop, St. Teresa says. We can work excessively. If what we do is not connected to love, however, our work is useless in God's eyes. So you and I are nurturers. We're lovers. We're lovers, first of all. We really are. We want to love our husbands, love our children, even love our neighbors that put up fences and decide not to have children or say, now, is that it for you? Are you going to quit? Don't you know how to fix that? My husband always loved that one. Don't you know what happened? My husband says, if they don't know by now, I'm not going to tell them. we have to forgive. Because you are God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with heartfelt mercy, with kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. St. Paul tells us in Colossians. So we have to clothe ourselves with heartfelt mercy. And that is even when we get those rebuffs about our children or about the way we live or whatever. My father eventually came around. It was a difficult time for him. But I kept loving him and praying for him and meeting my mother on the side. Those are the things we have to do. Sometimes it hurts. Bishop Sheen says that. He says that sometimes the only way that God can get into a heart is to break it. And so, even my father learned to love what he thought he'd never learned to love. It just took God's timing and not ours. And you and I have an arsenal. We have an arsenal. We are so lucky as Catholic women. Those poor Protestants out there, you got to be praying for them. They need to get back here because we have the Blessed Sacrament. We have confession right there. If you haven't been there, isn't that nice to walk into a room and unload, and know that God says he forgives you? Just think, it's a most wonderful thing. We have all of the sacraments. We have the Blessed Mother. The Blessed Mother, she was the vessel that carried Christ to the world. And she's asking us to be the same vessel that carries Christ to the world. So the rosary should be our best friend. We should be saying it all the time. Keep it in your pocket. Tell your kids, keep it in your pocket. Give it to them for presents. I have a drawer. When I kick the bucket, my kids are going to throw out the whole dresser. It's so full of rosaries. That's all right. The rosary is one of the most powerful. If we all spent more time in adoration, daily Mass, if you can go to daily Mass just one day a week, it'll change your life. If you can go to adoration 1 hour a week, it'll change your life. If you say the rosary every day, we had kids. Some of my kids are, I have one son that's a priest and another son that's, I have some of them that are connecting trouble for a hobby still. And a couple of them with one foot on the banana peel. They aren't sure where they're going to land. So I'm praying. But I believe the Blessed Mother and the Rosary puts a dome over our family. I mean it. A dome of protection. I really believe the guardian angels and all of the saints, a patron. I always named my kids. So I told them, they'd say, I'm adopted. I didn't learn this in my other country. I said, I don't care about your other country. I'm adopted too. Don't give me that garbage. I want you to know I took you kids right up to church and I had you baptized, and Dad and I gave you saints' names, and all those saints are praying for you, and your guardian angels are going to watch over you. You got to tell your kids that. Sometimes I'd catch them in things, and I'd say, one time Tina came up to me and she says, Mom, Tony's in real trouble. He's hanging around with this really bad group of people. And that's the thing. My mother used to say, tell me who you go with and I'll tell you who you are. That's so true with us, but it's also true with our kids. We can kind of sense when our kids are kind of hanging out with kids that aren't going to be good for them. So I went up to Tony and I didn't dare tell him it was his sister. I said, say I need to have my walls in the bedrooms washed this weekend. I want you to stay home with me. You're going to be washing walls this weekend. And so cancel all plans. And he said, who told? I said, your guardian angel paid me a visit. He said, what do you mean my guardian angel? I said, I'm just telling you. What can I say? So later on, I went up to Tina and I said, I really want to thank you. If you hadn't done that, and he dropped those friends. They decided that he was so busy with his family, he didn't have time to hang around with them and do drugs. One ended up in a juvenile prison, by the way, one of his so-called friends. And I said, that was really sweet of you. You were like his guardian angel. And she shrugs. This is my little Filipino daughter. She's a tough kid. She shrugs. She says, I didn't do it to help him. She says, if I couldn't get by with anything, why should he? I didn't care what reason it was. It worked. you know. We have to have confidence that God is hearing our prayers. We know it might not look like he's hearing our prayers. We may not see the miracle in our time. And that's where we have to be people of faith. But God hears every one of our prayers. And this is a wonderful thing we have to remember from John 1. And we have this confidence in him that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us in regard to whatever we ask, we know that what we ask for is ours. Right? And if we're praying for others, we're not praying for ourselves. We're praying for someone's soul. And if we love them and want something good for them, imagine what their Heavenly Father wants for them. All we need to do is ask. And I love one of my favorite stories is the widow who nags the corrupt judge. Do you know that one? I know by heart. That's me. That's me. I read that. I go, yeah, that's her. She follows this corrupt judge around and she keeps nagging him that she wants him to rule in favor of her son. And the judge finally says, you know, I care neither about man nor beast, but this widow is wearing me out. And I'm going to rule in her favor. I love that. Doesn't that give you hope? Our Lord told us to do that. He used that as an example. I thought, you know, you didn't have to encourage me, you know. One of my best role models was an aunt of mine who was also adopted. And she came to my prayer group for 10 years, and she only had one prayer. And it was for my cousin Charlie, who was an alcoholic. And she prayed every week, and she'd say, Dear Lord, I pray for my son. That's all she would say, pray for my son. And she died, and she never saw him come back to the church, and she never saw him healed. In fact, he died that way. And I thought, I'll bet Charlie's in heaven, because something that I don't know and you don't know, but God knows about that son. But my aunt's faith never wavered. Never wavered. And I know about St. Monica, and I think she's wonderful. But sometimes even other prayers we might not see in our lifetime, but God asks us to trust and have confidence. And when I saw that confidence and trust in my Aunt Dolores, it gave me confidence and trust in some of my kids who've really gone through some troubled times and are having real struggles, even now as adults. And I have to keep praying and keep nagging and keep loving the Lord. And my best prayer is to our Blessed Mother. Some of you know this prayer. I want to end with it. And if you know it, you can say it with me. I have to read it because if I stop reading, I cry. Lovely lady dressed in blue, teach me how to pray. God was just your little boy. Tell me what to say. Did you lift him up sometimes gently on your knee? Did you sing to him the way Mother does to me? Did you hold his hand at night? Did you ever try telling stories of the world? Oh, and did he cry? Do you think he really cares if I tell him things, little things that happen? And do the angels' wings make a noise? And can he hear me if I speak low? Does he understand me now? Tell me, for you know. Lovely lady dressed in blue, teach me how to pray. God was just your little boy, and you know the way. Thank you all, and God bless you.